Hi everyone, it's Joe Veneri, the host of Fit Insider, the show where I talk with the entrepreneurs, executives, and investors who are redefining the business of fitness and wellness. Today I'm joined by Jeff Byers. Jeff is the CEO of AMP Human, a human performance company helping athletes unlock their potential. In this episode, we talk about AMP's evolution from a single product into a platform, Jeff's plan to build a system around human performance, and how the company gained traction in the Tour de France, NFL, and United States military. A quick reminder before we get into today's show. Every Tuesday, we send a weekly newsletter filled with insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Join other decision makers and industry operators by subscribing at insider.fit.co. Let's get into it. Hi, Jeff. Welcome to Fit Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe.
Excited for today's conversation. And I think just to kick things off, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on at AMP Human?
Yeah, Jeff Byers here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a human performance company called AMP Human. We're really dedicated to finding relevant solutions to our core consumer, the athlete, and really figuring out how to really push the limits of the body and create a win for athletes of all types there. My background is a bit unique. I'm a former professional athlete, which really has been a great inspiration to building AMP Human and the opportunity in this human performance optimization space and giving me tons of great insights and relationships. I was a pro football player. I played offensive line for a handful of years in the NFL. Nothing to write home about, but I had a really fun journey, et cetera. Before that, I went to USC, Southern Cal, was a two-time captain of the football team there, got my master's in business as well. And I started AMP Human with my co-founder in June of 2018. So we're just past the 2.5-year mark of the business, but it stemmed out of a biotech that I was at previously, and the opportunity really came about from there.
Yeah, you just kind of humbly, try to gloss over the played in the NFL, nothing to write home about, but certainly have a good sense of, what it takes to play at the highest level, what high performance means. Also, the experience with the NBA and biotech. I think it's super interesting that when you think about the company, it really started with a product, which is the PR Lotion. And so can you just talk about, what is PR Lotion? How does it work? And how did that become a launch pad for the company?
Yeah, that's a great question. My co-founder and I were early team members at a early stage biotech based in Los Angeles. They had a really interesting technology around transdermal drug delivery. And when I joined the team, I was a pretty untraditional hire. Helped raise some capital, was in BD. And it was like, how else do we use this technology? And we had this crazy idea of what if we could use the tech to deliver non-drugs, a basic vitamin, mineral supplement, electrolyte, you name it. And that was really the genesis, this like skunk works passion project within the biotech that started AMP Human. We had MVP product on market, to say it lightly, when we were there, and no team to speak of. Like, it was pure hustle, scrap, free time, whatever we could make, put together. And that ultimately became PR Lotion. We got to a point in early 2018 that was, what are we going to do with this product? We were selling into some of the best teams in the world. We were being used by Tour de France riders, and we had some really strong traction within the US government and interest there. But the problem was, as you know, Joe, like, biotech is a very different animal than human performance or a CPG company. Like, right? Like, they were just starting to get into phase 2 clinical trials, and like, they were a lab, they're scientists, and like working on clinical trial design and things like that. It's just like, hey, we need to buy inventory. We need to build a commercial team. We need to get a go-to-market plan. And it was like, yeah, do it in your free time type of thing, And so we got to the point where we ended up acquiring PR Lotion, spinning it out and creating AMP Human. But when we started AMP Human, it was always been on this basis of a broader vision of, I was in the locker room when this thing called Hyper Ice started. And, for all you don't, like, they had a really innovative first product. It was an ice bag, but it was crazy innovative in kind of the locker room, training room. It was just a better way, a better ice bag. I don't even know if they still sell it, to be quite honest. They've evolved so much beyond that. But to see what Hyperice had become and kind of when we, 2018, Hyperice was jamming. And obviously, like, the listeners have listened to the Hyperice podcast and follow, and I feel like, right, they are the greatest example right now of, you start in elite sports, you create an innovation around that in human performance optimization, and you continue to build, et cetera. And so I really saw this huge white space in human performance optimization, that so many interesting things were happening in pro sports, in the Department of Defense, at the university, but there was no like commercial team or glue holding a lot of that together. And so I believe through kind of our unique relationships and access that we could be a commercial company and become a human performance brand rather than a product-based company. But to become a real brand, you got to start with the product. And our journey has been, we got PR Lotion on market. We had a minimally viable product for, call it, the first year and a half. And we invested a lot of money in cleaning up some of the aesthetics of that product and making it a bit prettier. We relaunched in January of 2020 with PR Lotion. But it was always about, how do we transition from a product to two products, to a platform, to a system. And so our 5-year vision is, how do we create a human performance system that's technology agnostic, but thinks about what are the biggest problems or limiting factors in human performance. And that's really where we're going, is how do we continue to think about innovative products? Do we in-license, acquire smaller companies that are doing incredible things in human performance? And how do we think about this secondary level of products? When we think about human performance, right, that's not just all innovation and it's also, what are consumers using, buying on a regular basis, that you can wrap knowledge in a system around to say, these are how products fit into your life as an athlete. And these are the things that you need. And not everything's revolutionary technology, but there's a lot of great knowledge-based system approach that can be applied. And that's really what we're building. And now I look back on it, Joe, you asked me specifically about PR Lotion. I didn't answer what it was or who it is. And I'm happy to jump into that too.
We can definitely circle back to that and put a pin in. I'll make sure we dig into it. But I think it's so interesting. And I really enjoy having this conversation. Obviously, now from, you mentioned Hyperice to Next Ventures to, XPT and FitLab VC, everybody in one way or another talking about this idea of human performance, optimizing human performance, the performance lifestyle. And it's obviously trending right now. It's a growing and developing market. So I'd be interested to hear, given that we're talking so much about it, just like, how do you define it? And beyond like the concept, how do you define the market in terms of like that opportunity?
Yeah, I think we as humans have evolved over the whole course of time. We've always been evolving around optimizing human performance, right? How do we run faster? How do we be stronger, right? How do we not get sick, or how do we stay healthy? How do we live longer? All of these things. It's always been at the background of, like, we as humans are always trying to one up the generation before us and such. So human performance has been around as long as humans has been. Like, how do we better ourselves? I think really what's happened over the last, call it decade, is this human performance optimization, whatever wellness categories, become way more defined. And there's much more science and focus in that area and stringing together what the pieces look like. And we're also just continuing to get smarter and smarter and smarter on what are the actual critical components to human performance and optimization. Where are the limiting factors that exist in there? And so when I think about human performance, it is everything from cognitive to, injury prevention to wellness to gut health. Like, it is this, from biohacking to training, it is this whole component. It's such a big market, but right now it's so fragmented. And I would say, really what has been the birth of human performance, and where are some of the, godfathers in this space? It's people like Gatorade, right? And it's like Gatorade 40 or 50 years ago was absolutely revolutionary in terms of how do we give the athletes more of what they need to stay at their peak for better. And now obviously Gatorade is something completely different and much bigger and broader consumer touch. But Nike is another way of like, how are we giving athletes tools to be better athletes? And those are kind of what if I believe that it defined this human performance space. And now one's a CPG beverage company, and the other is, owned by Pepsi, and the other Nike is the biggest apparel company in the world. But really, with roots in human performance, which I think is in human optimization, which I just love and am passionate about.
Yeah, it's now becoming such a wedge into much larger opportunities. The logical jumping off point is, you have human performance, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. You've done a fantastic job of getting traction with, cyclists in the Tour de France and NFL players, professional athletes more broadly, the military in the Department of Defense. Did that happen organically? Was there a strategy behind that? Can you talk about how you gained that traction and what the strategy has been to kind of amplify that?
I think I go back to what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And what I'm not is I'm not a classically trained marketer. I'm not my business experience is of hard knocks, and I'm super intuitive, and I make decisions quickly and such. But I know where I was good and where I'm strong. And what we didn't do early on and say, we have a perfect product, we're going to we're building a brand. We always said, we've got to build a community. And we always wanted to build a human performance company at the forefront of human performance, because if not, you're just a brand selling products. And we wanted to really differentiate that. And I think twofold happened is if you're at the forefront of human performance and you're working with some of the best in the world, it makes acquisition of customers much easier, right? From a business model perspective. It also gives us incredible opportunities to look at what else is happening there. And so the really approach first was win at the top, be really genuine in who we are, know what we know what we don't know. And I always, we're pushing the limits. We still don't know all the answers. We have a biotech product on market. We've had it on market for 3 years, call it. There's still a lot of data and knowledge and mechanism of actions that need to occur in this. But we've been really upfront with our consumers and in elite sports and these places to say, we are trying to remove a limiting factor, and this is where we're going. Be a part of it. And that's really opened up the doors in pro and elite sports, mirrored with, we're trying to solve problems. Let us help solve the problems. Let's have this be a partnership. Let's just not sell product. Don't get me wrong. I love selling product to, call it half the NFL and NHL and all these people. It's good. It pays for a lot of my team and things like that. So, but it's more about the partnership and the open dialogue, and it's almost a slow game. You can put up Facebook ads and sell product to consumers, but to break into a Super Bowl team takes a long time, and to get them over the edge, because it's not like we have 20 years of data to say yeah, this is good. We know it. It is. What is sodium bicarbonate, which is in PR lotion? Why does bicarbonate matter? And you're getting it through the skin. That's weird. And so it's been this long approach, but it's allowed us to gather together, right, what I would call one of the best scientific advisory boards or human performance advisory boards in the world, especially for a company our size. We've got, head of HP at Nike and Red Bull, and a senior nutritionist at English Institute of Sport, and some great researchers that's very much practitioner, business focused, military focused, that we've brought together. And it's not because we're a brand, it's because we are focused on pushing the limits and what's the future 5-year vision and how do we create something meaningful here. And so really, it evolved from, we got to win at the top if we want to be genuine, if we really want to be a human performance company. You win at the top, it trickles down. And now we're looking at, okay, now our core consumer, that athlete, how do we continue to serve the needs of that athlete? How do we leverage our access within the Department of Defense, within, pro sports, to generate new products and identify new solutions and problems. And, our next product, or our product that we launched in January, really came out of a conversation I had within a group within the Department of Defense when, the product's called D+ Lotion, and it's an innovative vitamin D solution, basically an alternative to taking a pill or a drop. It's transdermal, but we had a conversation with the DoD, and they were asking, like, what else can you do? Could you do vitamin D through the skin? And I was like, I'm not the scientist, and I'll go back to the biotech we came from and ask. And the technology for a Beyond PR lotion is very different than what D was. But they said we needed an alternative solution to give our soldiers, our war fighters, and to supplement vitamin D, because what is out there hasn't solved the problem, right? Like 60% of our operators are low in vitamin D, and vitamin D has these huge cascading effects, and we're trying to solve this problem. Could you do it? And that led ultimately to us acquiring what is now D+ Lotion in our portfolio, and allowed us to launch it earlier this year. Was we heard a problem and a need for a solution in the space, and we ran down and actually found a patented product that was built with the inventor and all of that, really great clinical data behind it, but didn't have a commercial team. And we were able to snatch it up and bring it to market, which we're super excited about. So that's kind of why being at the top and being with, the DoD has been so important, and pro sports and things like that, is it's allowed us to understand what problems exist out there, or what things could be built better. Where does there need to be disruption?
Yeah. And it's kind of getting that first-hand knowledge and experience, to your point, around what are the problems that they're facing, you being able to go out and solve it. One interesting thing that you kind of touched on there was just this working with the Air Force and the Department of Defense, actually contracting with them to develop and optimize performance. Can you elaborate, like, what is that relationship like? How did that even come about from saying, hey, yeah, we can help you do this, and now working on developing potentially products and solutions with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. How did that relationship come about? Just through the network, right? The Air Force is kind of they are on the innovative side within the DoD, and they've really pushed the limits of how do we bring innovation into the DoD? We know, like, we move really slow. And so how are we giving opportunities for our different units and things like that to match with, tech forward early stage companies, but also give these companies an incentive to do so? And that's kind of how we found the program that we're in. Like, we're really lucky. So we've won 3 government innovation contracts to date. We've got a handful others that are in the application cycle, et cetera. But, we've won $1.6 million and that's a lot of money for a company our stage, right? and pretty lucrative to say, how do we offset development work and research, because that's really expensive. And I think a lot of people forget how expensive, right, development and pushing the limits of human performance are. It really is. Like clinical trials are just point blank expensive to run and do that, and they have a long cycle. So we've been able to find, based upon our scientific advisory board and PR Lotion doing something so unique, and a lot of the anecdotal and data that we have already on PR Lotion, to say, let's explore this further. Let's find out how this best fits in a military application, in the Air Force application, to be specific. And is there a way that this can help drive air crew, pilot performance in the long term? And so that's really how we're looking at the big grant that we have, or contract, is around using PR Lotion within the Air Force and making that solution and tweaking it a bit to meet the needs of the air crew that is out there. So we're really excited. Like, we've kicked off research. We're about halfway through the contract right now. And we're going to expand that contract and look more deeply into, hydration and protocols and things like that for air crew who are, working at altitudes in extreme environments, heat, cold, et cetera. And so it's allowing us to kind of push the limits of human performance, but also have a great mechanism to actually go explore these opportunities and not, investors don't love like, hey, go take a moonshot with my money. Like they were like, how is this generating revenue? And the stage of the business we're at is like, we're a revenue-based company, and this is allowing us to invest in R&D and opportunity that may or may not pay off, but it has very low risk because it's a non-dilutive source of capital, and it's right. It's just been a great opportunity for our business. It's also been a great validator. Like for us to win an award of that size and work with a wing within the Air Force and be able to bring in an institution like UConn to do clinical research around it has been really incredible for our business from that sense. So yeah, we've been really lucky.
Yeah, it's like validating the market before you go and develop the product. It's like, yeah, we have it here. Now we can go forward with this idea. Certainly, if it applies to the elite of the elite in terms of the military, we can, find uses for it in terms of athletes and professional athletes or kind of amateur athletes, however that works out. So yeah, proving out that idea, it's certainly a really interesting and great opportunity for the company. I think when you think about the starting at the top, winning those elite and professional athletes, whether that's in operators as it relates to the military. The next piece that I think about, and we've written a little bit about this in the newsletter, is like this idea of trickle-down health. You mention it in terms of like Nike and Gatorade. Do you think about Amp Human as it relates to the general population beyond even athletes, just casual fitness seekers, everyday people? Or is it like you'll get there in time? Like, how do you think about broadening that customer base?
Yeah, Joe, I think that's a great question, and one that I'm glad that I have a great team around to help think through those questions. And so when we think about the market as a whole, Amp Human is going to be athlete obsessed in terms of direct to consumer, like the business. The problem is like our products have applications outside of like, athletes who train with a purpose. But our core consumer is going to be that athlete who trains with a purpose, like that is looking to level up every day. But there are tons of people who are always seeking to level up in other areas. Do I think we move down the pyramid as a brand as we age? Probably. And most likely we will. D+ Lotion is a great example of that. Like D+ Lotion, vitamin D deficiency, 70% of the US population is low in vitamin D. Point blank, like stat that's out there. So our vitamin D product doesn't touch just the elite athlete. It actually has way better applications and implications for the general health and wellness and kind of the fitness athlete, et cetera, than it does to the core consumer. But our market and our education is going to be around, right, elite sport, forefront of human performance, because it gives us the right to sell to that other consumer, right? We will be an aspirational brand, but also, right, D+ Lotion can live at Whole Foods or CVS or things like that, because that's where people buy those products. And so we'll get a lot of bleed over into that. And I think, the space that we won't ever get into as a brand is to be like everything to everybody. And when you come to Amp Human's website, it's going to be about, human optimization and about athletes and what are the core components to an athlete, right? Air quotes, people who train with a purpose. What are those key functions and pillars of that athlete? Rather than we're selling D+ Lotion to my parents who use D+ Lotion, but they're not our core demographic and never going to be the market we sell, address, et cetera.
Right. I think to your point, it would kind of be like that natural convergence of where you all are headed, how that market broadens. But at the same time, who would have thought in terms of, even somebody like Hyperice that kind of everyday person, to your point, like moms and dads that are just like, oh, I have this ache or pain and now I'm going to use, vibration to solve that, or to use this ice pack to solve that. So there's naturally folks that are just going to gravitate towards that as well, only serving to broaden that market. You mentioned there, somebody going to the website, it being about human performance, being an athlete obsessed. And I think now it's, you go to the website and there's the PR lotion, there's the D+ lotion. So what's on the horizon to the extent that you can, get into it? You mentioned a little bit about, hey, is it hydration? What does that look like as it relates to operators in the military? But really, now we think of the recovery category. sleep, kind of massage, vibration, what we're doing with heart rate variability, resting heart rate, like no shortage of opportunities. So how are you thinking about how this goes from, the idea to the formulation, distribution of like new products and stuff coming down the pipe?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've really thought about human performance in 3 buckets. So we think about it in perform, adapt, and evolve. And perform is really that moment of sweat, right? When the athlete is training or competing, and what leads up to that, like the pre-workout routine in there. Adapt is the 24-hour athlete of like sleep, nutrition, soft tissue work, all of those things that fit into this adapt is how do we recover to compete for the next day or train for the next day. And then evolve is really how we see like this 365. It's the things that, right, changes don't happen overnight. It's this habitual routine or lifestyle approach. And things that fall into that category really are cognitive training, gut health, immune health, injury prevention that affect the athlete long term. And so these 3 buckets of perform, adapt, evolve are really how we're helping define where the areas we play. And we've identified, right, like sleep is one that we're really, really focused on. We're also really focused on, in terms of next innovative products, muscle recovery of some sense, and then like this longevity, which is like injury prevention, et cetera. But then it's thinking about human performance, not just in like, where are these crazy innovative products? Because to be honest, like we're not like my team, and we're never going to be a science lab inventor-based company. Like that's not who we are. What we are looking for, and what we've used our scientific advisory board and distributors and partners say, what else is coming? What else is on the horizon? Are there opportunities to acquire, license, and bring in new IP in kind of these core areas of human performance? And so we use that as a funnel to say, what else is out there? What else is being developed? What else needs a commercial team, et cetera, on here? And so we believe this, we call them hero products, right? IP driven, newsworthy, et cetera. We're not going to bring one of those to market every year. Or less than every year, maybe 12 to 18 month turn cycle. So we just launched D+. We're now, vetting and starting diligence on potential other companies and really refining our strategy of what we want next in that. But I think what's really important is there's this whole next layer down other than these IP hero driven products. And it's around what are the stars? What are things that hold human performance together that are really important, but that aren't revolutionary products, but our core consumer uses on a daily basis? And so you think about sports nutrition and functional clothing like compression wear, all those things that play into human performance. Because what we ultimately believe is a system-based approach is going to win. And in the next 5 to 10 years, right? Like you're not going to be getting data from X, Y, and Z and then buying products, ABC. And it's going to be so like, tell me what I need to be optimal based upon these 7 things. And here's my routine that I go through. And here's what I'm trying to achieve. And so it's really, how do we create a system around perform, adapt, evolve, and provide products at various levels of innovation across that. So we are looking at launching sports nutrition based products, but not to be a sports nutrition company, but to say, how do we continue to add value to our core customer, right? We know it's athletes who train with a purpose, right? We know hydration is key. We know fueling is key. We know recovery is key. And nutrition and sports nutrition is a very crowded space, as we all know, but it's something that we know our core consumers use, and an easy add-on sale, never to be the face of the brand or who we are, but it's to say, here's how it incorporates in the system. PR Lotion is an incredible perform pillar, right? It is a buffering agent, is removing a ceiling that's put on performance. What other things are important in perform? Now we think about adapt, like how do we help you recover? How are we thinking about that 24-hour routine? And then evolve, right? Like D+ lotion, immune health, right? longevity, things like that. It fits so perfectly. But also, what are the other things we're thinking about, like giving athletes that they use on a daily basis and be more ingrained in that in our athletes' lives, rather than just like we got a cool performance product and a cool product in D+ lotion. It's let's be core to that consumer and continue to listen to the consumer and hear what they are looking for and need and other things that we're buying, because we're building a brand. We need to also be relevant and bring relevant solutions to market at all times. And to bring crazy innovation to market takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy and investment. And so what other things are out there that are relevant to this athlete who trains with a purpose do we continue to become, right? Be customer obsessed to ultimately build a suite of products to become a system-based approach where we can now use a system to say, you're doing X, Y, and Z. Here are the things, and not everything we'll own. Like we're not going into hyperesis space. Like that's not where we want to play. And so you should be thinking about soft tissue work, after things like this and like incorporate it into. So like really building a system and figuring that out, I think is core. So we are in Q2 of this year launching kind of our secondary pillar of products, or first secondary pillar of products in sports nutrition. We're doing a hydration mix and a kind of endurance-based hydration mix and a recovery drink in there. And then we're looking at other things future down the year, that we can get into later, but really excited about that. But those products will only live kind of in our direct-to-consumer business. Like we don't see those as products being at the forefront of human performance or really in the military yet, because they're not differentiated from the sense of they are pushing innovation forward. And that's just kind of how we've thought about, what does our direct-to-consumer business look like and how do we think about that core consumer and continue to be relevant in the space versus how are we working with the U.S. Department of Defense and pro teams and addressing their needs, et cetera, because the story and the consumer is very different.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that. And it makes, a ton of sense to me, balancing what are you doing from the innovation standpoint, pushing the limits, but also what are you bringing up to add to the system to make it relevant to the consumer as you continue to grow that business. No shortage of opportunities, especially when you put it in the perspective of the perform, adapt, evolve framework. It will be exciting to see this, holistic system come together. And I think, one of the things I wanted to touch on before we wrap up, just being mindful of the time, looking ahead to 2021, you mentioned some of the products coming down the pipeline and introducing some new products as you build out that, system. Anything else that we should be on the lookout for from you, even if we fast forward ahead, 6 to 12 months down the line, looking at where you want Amp Human to be, anything you're really fired up about, I think would be really interesting for me to hear.
Oh man. I'm really fired up about us really developing a system-based approach to human performance, right? And I think really what's so fascinating is human performance is not product-based, and it never will be, right? To really optimize the human, it's about a system. And when you look at the best athletes and the best tactical athletes, they have their own internal system. Right. They have all these things, but they also have a group of people working with them. And so, like I'm doing X, Y, and Z on these days, and here's my routine, and here's what I need and why I take it, and my diet and my training program and how I cycle and peak. But that hasn't trickled down, right? That system hasn't trickled down anywhere. So I'm most excited for this year is, to really have our business and my two partners in the business really define how do we go from, one product, which we were, to two products, which we are now, to a suite or a pipeline of products, which we will be in 2 months or 3 months, to a system. And how do we bring that to life? So I'm most excited about how do we bring content involved and use use Brett Kirby, who's, at Nike, and Per Lundstrom at Red Bull, to create relevant content in this perform, adapt, evolve system and how we're thinking about it, to start saying, here's how we should be thinking about perform, adapt, evolve. And Miss Athlete, here's some relevant content around Perform, Adapt, Evolve, and really thinking through it that space. So I think that's one of the areas I'm most excited about. And number two is just continuing to get more data and a better understanding of our products, because we are committed to getting data. We are committed to learning. And it's, some of the work we're doing with Air Force or other areas, it's about like getting that data and bringing it to life and being relevant to consumers.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's, personally, I'm really excited about it to see the system come together. I think the listeners will be as well. And I think to that point, and we'll get you out of here on this, what's the best way for folks to keep up with you and what you're working on at Amp Human?
Yeah, follow us on social media. But, more importantly, I think LinkedIn is a great thing from a business perspective. Like, we post a lot of more science-based and podcasts and things talking about our business and company, where we're going. But amphuman.com is the place to find everything about Amp Human, and you'll be the first to see new products, et cetera, on amphuman.com. So.
Awesome. Well, listen, Jeff, I appreciate you making time. Really excited to share this conversation, and thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to today's episode. For more from Fit Insider, visit insider.fit.co and subscribe to our weekly newsletter for insights and analysis on the business of fitness and wellness. Then, go ahead and subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. See you next time.